Looking back at your time in prison, what do you make of that as the person you are now?
I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Bankrupt, no money, no income, in significant drug debt. And I thought, I had time to set up a business. You have to find a way.
If there is a young entrepreneur listening and they're starting from zero, what advice would you give them?
That all starts with...
Tawhid, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, well, when you say who am I, obviously I'm a father. Me and my wife got 8 children between us. I am a non-league football club owner, which is interesting because it is run as a business, but currently not making any money. So, question whether that's a business. And then I also own and run healthcare recruitment businesses, and then also involved in other businesses, so not an online pharmacy. So all tends to be healthcare related, running businesses, supporting businesses, whether that is kind of working in them or on them or working them on a non-exec director side of things. So yeah, ultimately, I mean, if you're talking about my working life, it's, I guess, businessman really.
Well, take us back to your childhood. Were you surrounded by entrepreneurial people?
Not really. So I was brought up by a single mother. Never met my dad until I was 18 years old. So single mother, wasn't entrepreneurial, but worked very hard. So had to work very hard. So I remember me and my brother never went without. So we'd still go on all the school trips and the ski trips and things like that, which actually the single parent kids never used to go on. But our mum used to work really, really hard. So I've always seen that actually working hard is an important thing for you to be able to obviously, you know, be successful in life and have the things that you want in life. So I wouldn't necessarily say entrepreneurial, but I would say hardworking. Definitely hardworking. Majority of the people that I was surrounded by, maybe my uncles and people like that, tend to work for other people. They didn't tend to have their own businesses, but they would all have good work ethic. That was one thing that I definitely saw.
Take us back to that first business that you started. Tell us about it. What did it do?
So the first business I started, it's a rec-to-rec business. So it's placing recruiters into recruitment companies, and we tended to place recruiters that were recruiting within the financial markets. And that business, when I built that business, it was actually an idea that someone came to me that worked within that sector that I knew that was doing quite well, and I had worked in a few recruitment companies at that point. I'd worked for the biggest recruitment company in the world, turns over billions, Adecco, worked my way up to become a manager for them. And then you get to the point where when you become a manager, you look at the P&L. So you look at how much money you're making them, and then ultimately you look at how much money you're earning, and you kind of think, okay, well, hold on a second. If I'm making this much money for them and I'm taking this much, there's a chunk of money going elsewhere, and it wasn't to me. So naturally you look at that and you think, right, well, I can go and do this for myself, you know, and you know, even if I looked at it, even if I was only, you know, less than half as successful as I was for them, I'd still be making way more money, you know. So to me, it was never really a gamble or a risk. So set up that first business, built that business, done really, really well. Had probably about 10 staff and we were making really, really good money. We were probably one of the biggest rec-to-rec businesses in the country at the time. And then you hear about recessions, but you don't actually know what they are. You just think they're make-believe, you know. And we hit the recession in 2008, and we went from making lots of money to suddenly, overnight, all of our clients stopped recruiting, every single one of them. Now I'm thinking, right, this will change soon. Didn't change. Got rid of some staff. Still didn't change. Got rid of more staff, and then got to the point where I had a big office, and didn't have the staff because we couldn't afford them and we weren't making the money. And there was one of my friends who was still in recruitment, who was still making significant money. And I went to him, I said, how are you still making money and no one else is? He went, well, we're healthcare, we recruit into the NHS. He said, so first of all, it's public funded, so obviously the money is there. And he said, second of all, when you hit a recession and there's more deprivation, there's more illness, there's more reliance on the NHS. So actually in a recession, the NHS is even more relied on, which means from a recruitment perspective, a healthcare market is a buoyant one, even in a recession. So you've got money all the time round, and then suddenly a recession hits and there's more reliance on the healthcare system. So actually they need more doctors and more nurses. So that's when I thought, yeah, this is the market to be in. But obviously I'd never done it before, you know. So yeah, that was a big turning point, I think, for me. But yeah, that was the first business I set up, and that was kind of where it come to its natural end.
Well, the healthcare recruitment business, you went from your garage to meeting Ed Miliband, speaking at summits, winning business awards. Like, what did that feel like, that whole process?
So it felt like anything I did, anything I touched returns gold. It felt like I couldn't do anything wrong. I felt confident in every single situation. I felt any idea that I had is going to work. That's how it felt. It was literally like this period, like nothing could go wrong. Everything you touch goes well. Every decision you make seems to go for you. And, you know, you do feel like you're kind of walking on water almost. Like you do feel like everything's going well, and suddenly like you're making more money, you're taking on more staff, and then the more staff you're taking on, everyone literally thinks, God, I want to work for that guy, because, you know, not just I was making money, but my staff were making money. So when your staff are making money, more people want to work for you. And yeah, it's and then, as I said, meeting Ed Miliband, supporting the government with projects, and going on BBC News. They're following me around. Like it was a bit surreal, to be honest, but it does create a bit of a monster in terms of having a bit of an ego, because you do, like you said, if you think everything you do is going to work and nothing's going to go wrong, that's quite a dangerous position to be in, because you can become quite reckless.
Because it did go wrong, didn't it?
Yeah, no, horribly wrong. Yeah, horribly wrong. So yeah, I mean, I can talk about some of the things that happened. So making significant money at that point in time, went down the route of substance misuse, so cocaine, significantly. This initially just started going out on a night out, and then someone offered it to me, and I did it. You know, didn't really think much of it. Then it went to going out, and someone offered it to me a couple of times. Yeah, didn't think much of it. Then it went to me going out and thinking, oh, I'm going to buy my own, and bought my own. Again, didn't think too much of it. I'm only doing it at the odd weekend. That would then go to, you know, buying loads of it and going out at the weekend, then going back to someone's house and then partying, and it continuing. And then that would then go into having some left over in my pocket Monday morning. And then, I'll finish that off Monday morning, you know. Then that then crept into, I finished that bit Monday morning, I better get some more, to then having it on me all the time. At first, when I went into prison, it's really weird. I remember getting taken down from the dock, telling me how long I've been in prison for, going down, walking down into like a cell area. And I felt like I was in a film. I really did. It was really weird. I felt like I was in a film, and I was like, and I was weirdly excited to see what prison was like, you know, and because everything I was doing though at the time was still going well, making more money, taking more staff on, winning awards, securing this tender, doing this, doing that. Never ever see it as an issue, but it seriously clouds your judgment, seriously can make you really reckless in your decision making. You don't have sound judgment. Yeah, it obviously messes with your mind. I think it enhances whatever state of mind you're in. So if you've got a significant ego at that point in time, it multiplies it by 10. Yeah, and you think nothing I can do is wrong, and people would tell me, like, probably, I could have an accountant sitting down there showing me on a clear spreadsheet, this will probably not work. I'll be like, nah, don't worry about that. I'm not interested in that. We'll make this work. We'll just work harder. We'll just do this, you know. So you end up like when I say creating a monster, you end up just thinking that you're untouchable, you know, and yeah, you make bad decisions, you're reckless, you ignore warning signs, you ignore potential risk markers in your business, you know, and you just think it don't matter. We'll make it work, you know, without any real justification.
And what sort of time frame was that over?
So it probably been over probably, so the drug taking probably started, I had probably experimented minimally probably with drugs at about probably the age of about 25, 26, but it got really bad probably, as I said, from when I set up the healthcare recruitment business up, because that's where we kind of just started making serious money, and that's where...
And the money just amplified everything.
Money amplified everything. Money amplified everything we could do. Money amplified how long you can party for, you know, because then that ended up, you know, not just going from just taking drugs, that ended up like moving towards like prostitution and just like these wild parties back at places that weren't ending. And then it didn't matter if you carried on till 7 a.m. because you just top yourself up with some cocaine in the morning and you go again, you know, and you kind of get to work.
Is it common with like high achievers, this kind of lifestyle? Like the people who are earning a lot of money, is this a common
So
thing?
I'll tell you one thing I have noticed is in sales environments, it tends to be rife, I think, because, and I don't know if it's because salespeople can make a lot of money very, very quickly. So if I look at like my brother's training to be a doctor right now and he has got no money, he knows he's going to make money eventually, but he's got no money. He's probably one of the poorest people I know right now, my brother, but he's training to be a doctor. So he has to have a lot of control and restraint and, you know, kind of, he knows he's on the right path, but actually he hasn't got the ability to go out there and do all the things that I was doing. Overnight in a sales job, you might be only on a 20k basic salary, but if you do well, you're earning over £100,000 a year. You don't have to have 10 years experience. You can be 18 years old and go and do that, you know, and suddenly you're earning £100,000 a year, which is more than a doctor's salary. And what do I do with this money? So I do feel like within sales environments, there's a culture that it is kind of right. You've worked hard. You can enjoy yourself. You can party. And I don't know. Maybe the need it comes with salespeople as well. Not necessarily always having a strong academic background. I don't know. You know, and it's kind of like so maybe they've not been taught. You know, to how to have money or what to do. Do you know what I mean? But I've definitely seen it in sales environments because most sales environments or organisations I've worked in, there's always been talk of that, you know, drugs and going out and doing some cocaine.
I mean, you see about it in films. So I was just wondering whether this actually happens.
Yeah, no, I think in sales environments, I think it is. I mean, you sit there, people even talk about those stockbrokers that were doing it, and you look at the films like Wolf of Wall Street, and they talk about it. You know, I don't think they're isolated scenarios. I think that is something that kind of happens, you know, in sales. And like I said, I think it's people that make lots of money overnight, you know, and I think when that happens, you make lots of money overnight, and it can create a bit of an ego. People then want to go and show off, and they want to go out and they want to party, and they want to go and be seen in the right places. And when they're seen in the right places, they want to show off, and it's spending all the money, and it's buying the most expensive bottle of champagne in that bar, you know, because it's cool to do that, or it looks good. And then from there, you know, it's probably the other things. Oh, we're going to go back and have this party over here. And I think it's kind of comes with that lifestyle. I'm not saying everyone does it because there's a lot of people that I've known that work in sales that have never touched it. But, you know, there's a large proportion. And I made it the norm in my company because I'd even go down to we had 3 floors. I had an office on each floor, all had blinds in them. I remember like ringing a couple of lads. I'd be like, come down here, lads, and we'd do it downstairs in the sales office, you know, just kind of. I actually done a whole sales meeting, leaning over my laptop because basically there was a few people in our company that didn't touch it and they were very against it. And I remember I called a couple of lads down, racked a few lines of cocaine up for them, and someone said, "Oh, so-and-so's coming down," and I'm like, "No, he's not. He's got an open door." And I've leant over, and he wanted to chat to me for about 20 minutes. So I've leant over this pile of cocaine he must have thought, why is he sitting like that? And I've spent the whole 20-minute meeting sitting like that. When he's gone, I've got up and it's all over my tie, all over my clothes and everything like that. But yeah, it was a mad situation. It wasn't normal. I mean, I felt it was normal at the time though.
Yeah. When did you realise it was not normal?
When I was sat in a prison cell.
Okay.
You know, that is the moment. Even right up until then, even when I first went into prison, I was looking for it. The first couple of weeks, I was looking for it. And it was even easier to get it in prison. So when you're out in the streets, you need to ring someone that's obviously a dealer. Yeah. They'll come to you. There might be half hour, there might be 20 minutes, it might be an hour. Here in prison, want cocaine. Oh, that's cell number 19. He's got it over there. Or cell number 15. Or he's got it over there. No issue. Just go over there, go and get it. It's even easier to get it and more accessible, which I think why substance misuse is still such a big issue in prisons. You know, it's rife in there. You know, so it was really easy to get hold of it in there. I mean, people every Friday when I first went in there, people were doing. There was a group of us that would be doing cocaine and drinking every single Friday in prison.
Really?
Yeah, you know,
you wouldn't think that. No,
it's mad.
How did you did you stop in prison?
Yeah, I stopped in prison.
So how did you stop yourself from keep taking?
No, I remember sitting in there one day. I literally had this one moment. At first, when I went into prison, it's really weird. I remember getting taken down from the dock, telling me how long I've been in prison for, going down, walking down into like a cell area, And I felt like I was in a film. I really did. It was really weird. I felt like I was in a film, and I was like, and I was weirdly excited to see what prison was like. I was off my head on drugs, by the way. At the time. I'd been taking
That's fascinating, though. Yeah.
cocaine in as I'm being sentenced. I had it on me, and it's funny because when I went into the prison, they drug test you straight away, and they drug tested me, and the lady said, "Have you taken any cocaine recently?" After I've done my drug test, I went, "Yeah, I think maybe last weekend I must have taken." She went, "You're lying." She was like, "You're lying to me." Like, obviously,
She
I
knows.
must have blown this test up, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, But it was probably about a month in that I sat inside the cell, and I think it was so I was in a double cell before, first of all, with someone else. Then I moved into my own single cell, had all my pictures up on wall of all my family, and I remember just sitting there one day thinking, how have I ended up here? So I kind of visualised where I was a year earlier, and I did bring it down to the cocaine was a big issue, big issue, But I had always said to people it's not an issue because I had a big ego. Things were going well, making loads of money. You've seen my house, like, do you know what you're talking about? What you think this is affecting me, So, but when you sat there in a prison cell, you.
Let's rewind. So how did you go from the high life, earning loads of money, to sat in a prison cell?
Yeah. So when my business was struggling and it was then going under, me and my wife, we had lots of money, and suddenly it went to having no money. It was lots of pressure, lots of stress. I'm still doing drugs. I'm also doing things I shouldn't be doing with other women and things like that, in terms of the partying. That's not the sort of thing husbands should be doing. So this creates a lot of pressure. I'm constantly lying about what I'm doing and never telling the truth about stuff and things like that. And my wife, then I asked her for a divorce at the time. Everything was kind of okay. She obviously still saw that I was on drugs and doing all the things, so she stopped me seeing my sons. Probably the right decision, at the point in time. At that point in time, I was not accepting it. How dare you do that? They're my sons, So I went and took matters into my own hands at that point in time. Went and took my sons, put them into a car. She stopped me from going into the car, and as she stopped me, I've pushed her over. She's fallen over her bag. So now I've got my sons in my car. They're crying, screaming. Not something you should be doing. But again, I'm on drugs, thinking it's all normal. Driven off, she's calling me. I'm thinking, and I answer. So I was like, "Carrie, why are you doing that?" And it wasn't her; it was a police officer. A police officer said, "Look, we need to see you." So I'm thinking, "No problem. I'll come and see you. I'm guessing you want to check the welfare of my children." As we've checked the welfare of the children, they've gone there, and I've said, "Do you want to come upstairs to the house?" And they were like, "No." And they arrested me. They arrested me for assault at that point in time because obviously I pushed her out of the way. She's fallen over the bag and things like that. And then, obviously, through me. I then got arrested for controlling and coercive behaviour whilst I was in the prison cell and dangerous driving at that point in time. So got those 3 charges against me, and reality is, there was a dangerous driving, there was the controlling and coercive behaviour. Like I said, I was a bit of a monster in terms of the way I was behaving, my way or the highway. I made decisions on everything, and then obviously there was the assault as well. So then I got charged, and my court case wasn't for about 6 months. So I was bailed at that point in time, and then I had 6 months to wait, and then had my trial, got found guilty, and then I was sentenced and got 33 months in prison. Only had to serve 12 months though.
Was your company in debt when this was happening?
So my company had all been closed then, so I'd shut it all down, and I had sold the trade and assets to a large firm that turns over about 100 million. The trade and assets had been sold, and they actually gave me the job as CEO of the new company, and they were paying me significant money, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I mean, they were paying me 25 grand a month. Yeah.
Wow.
But I was still spending 20 grand a month, but I was probably in 100 grand's worth of drug debt and things like that by this point in time. So that money was never enough for me at that point in time. So, I parted company with them because I thought, well, the only way I can get out of this is set things up on my own, but I had no money. At this point now, I'd also been made bankrupt. So when my previous company went into administration, then we sold the trade and assets to a new company, there was still a personal guarantee, which was on my name for 2.4 million. That personal guarantee got called in. So I was made bankrupt. This is why I lost everything and ended up in sheltered accommodation. Couldn't even get a mobile phone contract. So couldn't get anything. And there's me, no ability to get a mobile phone contract, bankrupt, no money, no income, in significant drug debt. And I thought, it's about time to set up a business.
So you went from a mansion, I assume,
Yeah, big
to
house.
sheltered accommodation to a prison cell.
Yeah, all within probably about 8-9 months, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was what was going on in your mind during that? Like that
So-
must have been because you're obviously very used to the money at that point, and was it central to how you sort of?
Do you know the one thing I think I have been lucky with and on my side, the fundamental reason that I've been able to make money is I'm always willing to work hard. So that doesn't go away no matter what. If you're willing to work hard and put the hours in, I used to look at it and think, well, I'm working harder than my competition. They're all thinking, how are you making more money? I'm working twice as hard as you, So I used to kind of have that work ethic. And then the other thing is as well, I've always taken time to understand my markets and understand where the opportunities are. So I've never worried. I've been doing this for, 25 years now, and I've been through recessions and I've been through ups and downs, and I've been through changes of markets, changes of governments. They decided, especially with the NHS, we're putting money elsewhere. We just have to find a way. You have to find a way. And where's the money? How's the money going to flow? And how do we get access to that? So I've never been worried that I'm not going to make the money. So when the money's dried up because something slowed down, or like we've hit a recession in 2008, it's like, okay, what do? Give up? Well, that's not a solution. That's not an answer. The solution is to find, okay, where can we make money? And if that meant, if someone told me, by the way, being a binman makes you loads of money, I'd go and be the best binman I can, So, so that doesn't never really worried me, whether it's an industry I don't know, I'll go and learn it. It's never really been a big concern for me. So, yeah, I think whilst the money has been important to fund my chaotic lifestyle and things that I was doing, the thing for me, I think the driving, whilst it is money, the driver is to be successful in whatever you're doing, really. And I think I've always felt that I could do that no matter what. I feel like if everything come crashing down tomorrow, I think I'd find a way or do something, And I think that belief in yourself, I think others can see that as well, which is why when I had no money, £2.4 million personal guarantee, bankrupt, couldn't get a mobile phone contract, I managed to convince 5 of my directors from the company to come and join me. So
Are you a good salesman?
I think what it is I think people know that I won't allow anything to fail. I'll do whatever it is. So they probably understand that if I go on that journey with him, he might not find a solution today, tomorrow, but he'll find it. And I think that's what they see in me is they know I'll find a way. Whatever it is, if like I said, if our market came crashing down tomorrow, I'd probably sit there and be like, right, what opportunities are in the market? Right, let's go and do this. Yeah. And I have been a bit like that in the past. If I see markets slowing down, I start looking at, what else can we do? Is there any other opportunities elsewhere? So, I guess for them, what that means is they don't have to be concerned about long-term security, because they always know that I'll find a way.
It will work.
Yeah.
How much money were you making pre-arrest? What was the peak?
Probably the most I've made a month, probably 150 grand a month.
150 grand a month.
Yeah.
And then, so you get arrested. You're sat there with nothing.
Yeah.
What was your step one to actually build that company and get it off the ground?
Right. So because I had no money or anything, so I went to my aunt and I asked my aunt, I said, can she loan us some money? She agreed. Yep. She'll loan me some money first of all. So she did that. She cashed in some shares she had in something, and she put some money into the business.
How much are we talking?
20 grand.
20 grand.
20
Okay.
grand. But obviously we had to set a business up from scratch, so that isn't lots of money. Bearing in mind I had other directors as well that I was bringing on board. But I still had no personal income, so there wasn't the ability for me to pay myself anything.
Yeah.
So obviously the first thing you got to be able to do is obviously set up your websites and set up your legal structures and bits and pieces like that. We knew the market we were hitting, we knew what we were doing, so there wasn't any training or anything that needed to be done within that. All my guys had existing clients and existing candidates that they had been working with. So again, there wasn't any concerns about how are they going to generate business. I knew I had the right people on board, so I knew it would work. Which is why again I kind of said to my aunt, look, we've done this before. There's nothing new that we're going to be doing. It's exactly the same, So she was willing to do that, and I she more than got a return on that money. And yeah, so she done well out of that. But the big thing for me was I didn't want to put any financial burden on the company, so I didn't want to take any money until it was making money. I didn't want to borrow 20 grand of my aunt to pay myself money, and I still had debts that I had to pay back and things like that. So that was the tough part. So I remember I had no car. I had a mobile phone that I could only use if I had Wi-Fi. My laptop, again, only if I had internet access. Didn't have internet access in sheltered accommodation. So I would plan my journey wherever I was walking from and to. Like, I'd still go gym and do things like that. But I'd always plan to go past the places that would allow me to log on for free Wi-Fi, because I would literally stop, get my laptop out, work for half hour, got my mobile phone now as well. That's picking up emails, that's picking up everything. Then I'd be like, right, cool, shut my laptop. Now have no access. So I need to, next place is 15 minutes away. Cool, walk to that next one, get to the next one and go wherever I was going. So I'd always plan my journeys to make sure that I can jump on a free Wi-Fi and things like that. I didn't have money to go and sit in a coffee shop and buy a coffee. So you know, that wasn't an option. So I'd be sitting outside places on the brick wall. But luckily the pubs weren't open at that time, you know, in the morning when I was walking past them. So no one probably thought I was weird, but I'd like literally plan my journeys. And that was probably one of the things that I was like, when you have literally got no money, no ability, you have to find a way. Yeah. And if that means sitting outside on a brick wall outside the pub before 12 o'clock, before they open, to jump on their free Wi-Fi. Some of them though would only give you 30 minutes free Wi-Fi, so I'd have to move to the next one anyway. So yeah, that was a bit mad, really.
If there is a young entrepreneur listening and they're starting from zero, what should they be focusing on? Is it market research? Should they just be testing ideas as quickly as possible? What advice would you give them?
So I think for you to be confident in what you're doing, because I think confidence has a lot of things. Confidence gives you that belief to continue when the chips are down and things aren't going well. And I believe you can only be confident if you trust what you're doing or the direction you're going in. And you might be going in the wrong direction, but I think if you've got that belief in yourself and that trust, you'll find a way, and it might be slightly pivoting in a different direction or doing something else. But if you've got that belief, you'll work hard. If you work hard, you'll test, your market and test your product, your service you're selling, which will give you feedback. And that will give you feedback to kind of maneuver and go in a different direction and find your way. But I think that all starts with research. I think if you do not research your market, you can't have belief in it, because you're kind of going like, yeah, I think this is a good idea, I'm going to give it a go. And then do you know what you do? Spend a couple of days in it and you get nothing back. And because you don't really believe in it, or you don't even know if it's a legitimate market, you kind of give up. So I think that's the thing, we're just talking about a coffee shop. How many coffee shops pop up and they still make money, So coffee shops pop up, like, would someone be sitting there going, yeah, but someone's already done that, It doesn't. Just finding a slightly different, unique idea.
What makes good market research?
So I think first of literally researching, obviously, I think you've got to look at data. I think data is really, really important. That's something that I've always done. I'm an Excel geek. I love Excel. Everyone's like... the spreadsheets that I'll put together, and that's all self-taught. I've never been taught how to, but I literally would just go on Excel and create these spreadsheets that would give me all the information that I would want. So data was really, really important, and I think that's a great place for anyone to start. We're setting up another business right now, which, funny enough, we spoke about earlier within the paddle sector, and it's looking at paddle balls. What did I start with? I started with data. So what I looked at first of all is to try and find the data of how many people currently play, how many courts there are, how many people then are playing more than twice a week, which I managed to get that data. Then I looked at roughly how many courts are they planning on opening over the next 2 to 3 years, and we could get all this information from the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, and then we could then calculate, okay, well, if there's going to be that many courts and there's going to be this many people playing, how many balls are going to be used, which we could then calculate, which would then work out. We then went and worked out, okay, well, how much can we buy the balls for? X amount. Cool. How much can we sell them for? Excellent. This is how much margin. So if we can only get 10% market share, it's not going to work. If we can get 15% market share, we can make some money. So we were kind of like, everything I will do will be data-driven. Every single thing. Find the data first of all. And if I couldn't find that data, the reality is I can't legitimately or confidently say that, or demonstrate to other people that, look, this is where we go, this is the direction, so I'd always use that. And I mean, I've got it on my phone now, and I'll show you guys after. I've got all that data, which is I think it's the first message that I put. I'm doing this with 3 other guys, this business. The first message I put in our paddle group, I was like, right, we need the data first of all. I went and got all the data, and I put it down there, and then all of them were like, oh my God, this is a great opportunity now. But they all believed in it because they can see it in black and white. So I think if you can get the data's the first thing you start with, and then
What's the second thing?
I think then you need a plan. How you're going to do it, how you're going to execute it. So I think once you've got the data, I think that's something which can drive your plan, because it could say, like, for example, if we could get the data of how many people are playing 2 to 4 times a week, and actually it's more people playing once a week, then you might say, well, actually they're more of a novice player, so actually it's going to be more popular to have low level balls rather than premium balls. Do you know what I mean? Because the premium players are going to be playing like 2 or 3 times a week. The people that are not. So actually, where's the bigger market? So then you can formulate a plan, and then you have a plan in terms of how you're going to do it. So for example, again, I'll talk about the paddleball company. We looked at it and we said, well, actually, we make more margin if we do our own balls, if we go and actually have our own brand. But we're like, okay, and we looked at it and we thought, well, because paddle's quite a young sport in the UK, there isn't massive brand loyalty right now. Whereas if you go to football, you've got Adidas, Nike, let's be honest, they're the big boys, in that space. But actually, if someone turned up with a paddle racket today that I had never heard of, I wouldn't assume that it's a bad racket. I just assume I just don't know about that racket yet, So there isn't that brand kind of loyalty to that sector. So we were like, okay, well, we could just launch a ball straight away. But we were like, okay, well, who's the big website right now that sells balls? There isn't one. And then we were like, football. Who's the big people that sell football boots? Pro Direct Soccer. Now, we were saying, if Pro Direct Soccer suddenly rocked up with a brand that I had never heard of, and they were selling this brand of football boot, automatically I assumed that this is a good brand of football boot, because the website's got legitimacy and we trust it. So we were like, okay, so why don't we go and use the existing brands to build a website, build some legitimacy on that website, and why don't we launch our ball 9 months down the line and put it right next to Adidas, right next to Technofiber and all those other guys. So we kind of formulated a plan about how we're going to do it now, so, and then that plan gets put together, put a business plan, and obviously the next thing we have to do is got to look at the numbers. Business has got to make money ultimately, and again, depending on how much money you've got, probably depends on how much you can spend, what resources you've got, or what resources you can get access to, and again, about how many people you might be need involved, because again, if you need more money, maybe that's more people, more investors within that business. So that allows you to really formulate that plan. And then, it's I think then beyond that, once you've got a plan, I think it's about having the right people involved as well. So we outsource a lot of the things that we do. So I've found I've got a really good marketing guy that I use for all of my businesses. Trust him. I can ring him up and say, I'm thinking of doing this business. How would you do it? And he'll come back with a plan and he'll tell me this is how I would do it. And we've got some really good AI guys now that we use as well. We've got plan, business, how can we use AI? This is what we would do. So I've got some really good, and then accountants, right, this is what we plan to do. I mean, with one of our businesses right now, we're looking at launching a new platform using AI. They even come to us and say, look, it's research and development. You'll get X amount of your money back as well, because it's R&D tax benefits and things like that. So again, I think it does help. I think it does help if you've got those contacts, and you get those contacts over the years, but I don't think that is, that's if you haven't got them, it means you're going to fail. I think, they're just additional things that as you get through your life in business and you find the right people, you can lean on them.
Extra rocket fuel.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why, I guess, people in business that have been in business a long time, they tend to become more successful, and I certainly find it easier to build a business now than when I was younger. That's the truth, because I found every single way how not to make money. So, because it's tried and tested, so, but you don't want to have to do that, but ultimately you'll get there in the end. But yeah, I think, you don't have to have it, but it does get easier. It does get easier. You get better, I guess. It doesn't get easier.
Yeah. Even with all the data and a plan and everything, things can still go wrong. How important is it for a young entrepreneur to learn to pivot?
I think it's really important, because you can have the best plan in the world. I think you can have the best business in the world. outside external forces can change things. Like I said, recessions, that can hit you. You could have a fabulous business, suddenly recession hits and it could affect you. What are we going to do? Do you give up? You just need to find an alternative solution to be able to generate revenue ultimately. So I think it's really important. I mean, if you're going to be in business, it'd be great to say that you set up a business and then you build it and it just continues to grow for the rest of your life until you die. That'd be perfect, wouldn't it? But I don't believe that's true. You've seen some examples, some really big businesses that are struggling. I mean, it's really funny, actually. We went to book NCP car park. Apparently NCP is in administration. I was like, it's got on the top of the website, booked it yesterday. Apparently it's in administration. I'm like, how
have they done that?
I know. I'm like, and then I'm having a massive conversation with my wife about, but surely they own the build, surely they own them and all this. And so we had a big conversation. But NCP, I don't know why. I was so shocked that NCP is in administration. If you own their website, it says it.
That's
right at the
crazy.
Top, currently in administration. So apparently they've got 22 sites that are unviable, that are not making money.
That's mental.
Yeah, so look, I think it's really important to be able to pivot, and I also don't think that you should be really committed to if you're just solely committed to doing things one way or one industry, it could be tough, because I think you do need to pivot. I mean, we look at now the age of AI coming through, and
You're gonna have to be adaptable.
you have to. The world's moving, and I think if you don't, and you're not willing to look at other ways to be doing things, you could have a great business and an AI comes along, because obviously technology 5 years ago, a lot of companies, their advantage was the technology. Now the technology is available to everyone, so I think it's really, really important. I think you can't be scared of changing. You can't be scared of changing. I think you should be more scared of not changing, and if you're seeing these little things like the market is dropping and things are dipping down, I have seen other people that are that have stuck to something for too long and they've ended up dying out, and I think if you stick to something for too long and you end up dying out, it can probably affect your kind of confidence and your motivation to go again. But yeah, so definitely important to pivot, definitely important to sense check what you're always doing, always important to test your market, gauge where things are going. Markets have blips up and down and things like that. But if you're seeing 2 quarters, it's just literally dropping and dropping and dropping, I think you have to look at it and be like, right, we've got to do something here. I'm not a fan of doing nothing. I would rather do something and fuck it up rather than
just
not doing anything
and
and hoping it's going to get better. Yeah, and then at least I can sit there and go, yeah, fuck that one up. Didn't do that right decision. But then if I make that decision and I mess it up, that's in my control. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I would rather be in control and say, yeah, it's his fault. He messed it up, because then I can get it right next time.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my preference, is to always take action.
How have you seen AI been adopted in the sales industry?
So I think in terms of lead generation and things like that, it's been really useful. And I think, 9 times out of 10 now, if you go to buy a product online, you're speaking to a computer, aren't you? An AI computer. We use it on our websites right now, on our healthcare websites. We use a lot of AI. We are now introducing it into our recruitment companies as well. We're currently doing that as we speak. So we have, we're bringing on board that we've got a company that's building a whole ecosystem in terms of the whole way that our business works, and that's going to allow us to scale up without having to take on any more staff as well. So yeah, the dreaded, it's going to take jobs. It is, yeah. But look, as a business owner,
But then adaptability again, it comes back to that mindset they've got to develop.
Of course, and look, everyone wants to streamline, and it's one of those things, unfortunately. But look, none of the guys that are with me are all with me because I value them, and I value them even if we can leverage AI. But I think it's really useful, because if you've got AI that can help you scale your business up when things are busy, cool. Things quiet down, no issue. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think it's really, really valuable in every single market, especially the operational stuff as well, especially those tasks that are repetitive tasks and things like that need to be constantly done. But we are going to be using AI to constantly interact with our database as well. Constantly going to be speaking to them, constantly keeping them live, constantly keeping their availability up to date as well, making sure we know when they're available, which is a great tool because right now, if someone needs a doctor, we have to go around and we have to email everyone, are you available? Text them, are you available? Call them, are you available? Whereas if AI has done all that work in the background already, it's ring up and say, oh, Dr. X is available, by the way, because he spoke to our AI yesterday and told him he's available.
Yeah.
So it is going to speed things up massively.
The people that don't get replaced by AI, what is it about them? Like the employees, why have you not replaced them? So what skills does a young person out there watching this right now need to learn and need to get good at?
So I think using your initiative is going to be a massive one, I think, for anyone. Because I think if you can't use your initiative, you potentially are replaceable. Because that's got to be a key attribute now with AI being able to take on day-to-day tasks and AI being able to take on anything that is something repetitive within a business. For you to come in and say, I'm just going to do this functional role and this operational role and I'm just going to do this for you every day, AI can probably do that for you. Whereas if you can come in and say, by the way, I'm going to do this for you every day, but I'm going to improve the way that it's done and I'm going to look at more efficient ways to be able to doing it. I'm going to actually make your business more streamlined because actually I'm going to get through more work today because actually I've put a new system in place. I think you've got to be able to use your initiative because I don't think AI will necessarily do that. AI will take the task on board and it'll probably complete it for you. Whereas actually if you've got someone thinking around outside of the box and, oh, hold on, how does this actually incorporate with that part of the business and does it work properly? So I think using your initiative is going to be massive. So whilst that people are employees out there, they probably have to have a bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset, I would say. Otherwise AI could, like I said, it's going to be able to do the simple tasks.
As an employer, what do you think of someone who has a degree, as in, does that affect your judgment anymore?
Me? What, in terms of employing them if
Yeah.
they have a degree?
Does it affect your judgment? Do you think, oh, they're more credible or do you not anymore?
Not at all. My wife will hate me saying that because she loves education. She's doing a master's right now. She's a qualified barrister, so she's done all of her education. She loves learning and things like that. But look, for certain industries, it is a necessity. So, for example, if you want to be a criminal barrister, you have to go and pass the bar. You have to do that. So you have to have gone to university. Yeah. So I think, but for me, in my businesses, there's no requirement for you to have a degree. There's a requirement for you to have common sense, which isn't that common, unfortunately, nowadays. And there's a requirement for you to have that, use that initiative and things like that. So I would look at that more. I do like life skills. Our industry is still an industry where we have to be able to connect with people. We have to be able to build relationships. So those things are more important to me than are you able to sit down and study and actually complete an exam. So for me, it would be those life skills, those people skills,
Sure.
communication skills and things like that. They're probably going to be more valuable to me, but I think every industry is going to be different.
Okay. There's just a few more things I want to ask you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So looking back at your time in prison, what do you make of that as the person you are now?
I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me, genuinely. So I think if I hadn't gone to prison, I think I could be dead. I mean, £20,000 a month on cocaine and partying is going to take its toll on you. It's going to take its toll on your heart, I'm sure. So I think that's the first thing. I think potentially it stopped me. It's probably saved my life. But it also, big reality check to realise that you can't continue the way you're doing. And I lost a lot of things. So I haven't seen my two sons since 2018. And that is a big gap in my life right now. So whilst everything is going really, really well, so I've got a 6-year-old son now as well, and I've got a 1-year-old daughter, and things are on track. Don't really drink, might have the odd Prosecco over Christmas and things like that. Obviously don't touch drugs, haven't touched drugs since I was in prison. I haven't touched them. And I've got a lot more balance in life. So Harrison will tell you I'd like to go gym in the morning, play my paddle, do my gym workout.
6 a.m. paddle.
Yeah,
paddle,
and if I'm honest as well, I don't tend to work. My working hours tend to be kind of 9:30 till 2:30. Spend a lot of time with my son, so he's in academy football, so I'll take him to football, and then spend family time, then running the football club. So I've got complete balance, whereas before it wasn't. It was like, right, make a shitload of money. And now let's go and spend it and party. That's what it was.
It's
It
a
was
complete transformation.
Yeah, complete transformation. So it's a million miles away from what I was before. I think I've learned to have more respect for other people as well. I value other people's opinions more. The ego has gone. You wouldn't say it's completely gone because there's always some of that in you. And I think you do need a bit of that for business as well, to have that belief and that driving force to, get everyone on board and right, this is what we're going to be doing. But not to the level where it's like a megalomaniac and just like, right, this is, right, let's go and all do this and come down here and do cocaine and right, we're going to go partying. Right, who's coming to the pub tonight? And if someone would look at me and give me that look, like not think they're coming to the pub, they'd know they can't say no to me. I'll be like, no, you're coming for one. And then when there's one, I'd be like, right, here, come in the toilet, do this. And I'll keep them there, But yeah, it was a big reality check for me going to prison. I think, as I said, I don't think I'd be alive today. I don't think I'd have the balance in my life. I don't think I would have 2 more children. Don't think I would be married, especially not to my wife, because she's completely against all of that sort of stuff. She's been really, really supportive of everything because she actually gave birth to my son whilst I was in prison.
Really?
So,
Okay.
And you've got to remember as well, between the period of me being charged and going to prison, I was still taking drugs. So I got with my wife. She used to work for me. She used to be the head of our legal department at our company. But she didn't know that I was on drugs. Wow. She was one of them that was completely against it. Yeah. She didn't have a clue that I was on drugs. And now, but then when she obviously found out, she was like, this can't happen no more. And then I think when I was in prison, I thought, right, I've got a lot to lose now. I've got another son on the way. I'm not seeing my other 2 sons. She wasn't my wife at the time, but obviously I didn't want to kind of go down that same road that I'd been down. So that reality checking me thinking, right, no more drugs or anything like that. That kind of brought me back down to reality and made me reset, I think.
Yeah. Just one question to end the interview. So what would you want a young person to take away from your story?
Okay, so I think like the first thing, if we take away all the chaos around it, I think the first thing is that if you have got the determination, the willingness to go out there and, the resilience, you can make a lot of money setting up a business on your own. Yeah. And you haven't got to get it right first time. Very few people get it right first time. I think there's a quote, isn't there? It takes 10 years to be an overnight success, so these sorts of things, I think it's true. The problem I think a lot of people have got is everyone only hears about the success stories, which is like someone made millions on Bitcoin or made this amount of money overnight, because everyone goes and talks about them, but they don't talk about the person that built his business for 10 years and then suddenly went and, bought £1 million house because actually I did 10 years. It's like, oh, that isn't that impressive, but it is impressive. Building a sustainable business is impressive. So I think, I think the first thing I would say is, look, you can make a hell of a lot of money, but it hasn't got to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen in your first year. Consistency will get you there. Finding, like I said, ways how not to make money will eventually get you there. So I do see some people that set up businesses and it just doesn't work, and then they just go back to working for someone else. Yeah. That's it, and that's it. And they're like, oh, well, I've tried it. Well, okay, I know you've tried it, but that didn't work. So maybe try again. I don't know if you're aware, but what you tried didn't work. So it might not be a bad idea, but I think you have to have some guts about you as well. I think guts, because you want to be able to take calculated risks, but if you've never done it before, you have to also take a bit of a leap of faith as well. And if it doesn't work and it doesn't generate the results you want, back to the drawing board. Where do we go? Back to the drawing board. Where do we go? Back to the drawing board. Where do we go? So yeah, I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is as well is that if you are in a fortunate position to make a significant amount of money, I think what people should do is they should have some priorities in life in terms of what they want, what they would like to be able to do with their money. Because I think if you've got things that you have, prioritised, right, I'm going to go and build a big buy-to-let portfolio of businesses and things like that, you're not spending all your money on partying then. Do you know what I mean? And I think also having a good balance is important. And I think also surrounding yourself with good people is really, really important as well. So, I mean, good people that aren't taking drugs, It's probably a good start. Because like I said, you are going to have the freedom to be able to do a lot of things that other people can't do. Other people might try drugs, but they can't afford to do it all the time, so it can't become a problem for them. But suddenly, if you have got loads of money, it can become a problem. So I think just being mindful that you have that freedom, but don't let that freedom become reckless,
out of control.
And out of control.
I may have lied. I've got one more question. So, what is the single best piece of advice that you've had in business?
it was actually someone before I set up the healthcare recruitment company. I think market research is really, really important. I think, like I said, I kind of spoke about that earlier, because I think that ultimately then gives you the belief in your project or whatever you're doing. Research. I hate research. I hate education. I never liked school. I do love research, because for me, that just gives me the foundation of knowing what I'm going to go and do. And there was someone that spoke to me. He actually gave me a couple of books to read, to be fair, business books. And one of them was about researching your market and making sure that you believe in your market. So, yeah, he kind of spoke to me about that, and just saying, obviously, first of all, do the market research. That's going to be the foundations for you to make sure that, obviously, you can make good decisions, a good business plan, effective business plan, have the belief in what you need to do. So that would probably be the thing that I would say, that was kind of what stuck with me after that. And I've always used that as a fundamental part of any business that I've gone to set up.
Amazing.
And to wrap up, if you could give one piece of advice to your 25-year-old self, what would you say to him?
25-year-old self, well, he wouldn't listen, but and it's difficult, because I'm thinking about actually to myself. I mean, I think what I'd probably say to myself is, you probably got such an opportunity here to make such an impact on the NHS, on the business world, that you need to get control of your life and control of the things that you're doing outside of work, because it's never really been the work stuff that's ever been the issue. It's been all the other stuff that has then crept into that world. But it's I'd definitely be sitting down and having a stern chat and just be like, you can't do this stuff anymore. This has got to stop. Otherwise you're going to end up losing it all. And people had said that to me, though. My friends used to come to me and say, you need to slow down on the cocaine. And I'd be like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So like I said, that 25-year-old I don't think would listen, which is sad really to think. But yeah, that would be the piece of advice that I would give him.
Tide, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
No problem at all.